My name is Jerry Marzinsky, and I've got Gretchen with me today. I worked on the front lines of mental health here in the United States for close to 40 years, still involved with it. Um, Worked at the largest psychiatric hospital on the planet for 7 years, spent about 18 years in the psychology department of a state prison, worked psych crisis for 10 years in hospital emergency rooms, um, worked in mental health centers. So I've been on the front lines for a long time. And what the psychiatric mafia is doing does not work. They're dishing out these chemicals that induce a chemical lobotomy to these patients. They're some of the most dangerous drugs in medical use today, and with extended use, actually do permanent neurological damage to the uh, brain and nervous system of these patients, and that's well known. So. Yeah, the system, the Western mental health system, the drug-fueled, pharmaceutically based um, system does not work. It is not curing anybody. They don't know what causes schizophrenia. They don't know how to treat it. They basically lock these people up, send them to prison, or drug them senseless. Now, shamans have been curing this malady for thousands of years. And when a prominent researcher, Dr. Ermark, witnessed a shaman cure several people of schizophrenia, he wrote to the Journal of Religion and Health, I think it was, and published an article on that. When that article came out, the psychiatric mafia and the academic establishment just attacked him furiously. Despite the fact that they didn't know what causes schizophrenia, they don't know how to treat it, they don't know what causes it. All right. So the psychiatric mafia, the pharmaceutical establishment, and the medical establishment are all brainwashed into thinking that pharmacology is the only way to treat this illness. They're trying to push people to believe that it is a disease. It is not a disease. So what we have here today is Gretchen, and what you're going to hear is from the horse's mouth. Gretchen started hearing voices after using methamphetamine. She was committed to a psych hospital, and then she was taking these neuroleptic medications for 4 years on and off. And then that didn't cure anything. I mean, she got to the point where she couldn't stand them. She'd go off them again. The voices would start, and she'd be in trouble again. So after 4 years, she went to an energy healer who's similar to a shaman. And that person helped her get rid of the voices. And she's been clear of them for 4 years now. So I'm going to let her tell you her story, how this all started, what it was like to be in the mental hospital, what it was like to be locked up there, what the meds felt like, and then what it was like to go to the energy healer. So Gretchen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jerry. So I had my first psychotic episode when I was 18 years old, and then I was treated for a few years with neuroleptics until I met my healer. And it first started, the first experience of the psychosis started with strange thoughts and sleepless nights. But at first, I didn't feel any fear or anxiety. On the opposite, I felt euphoric. And I started having inputs of strange negative thoughts by the entities after a while that told me that my mother wants to poison me. And
Now,
then
how did you tell the difference between the entities and your own thoughts?
I couldn't. At first, I couldn't. Just after some time, when I was treated by the neuroleptics, and when I slowly started to recover, then I realized what happened. And also my parents told me, this wasn't you, you didn't behave like yourself, this was nothing like yourself, you were a completely different person.
And
Mhm.
at what point did you figure out that your thoughts were different from the thoughts that you were getting by these entities? Or did you have to struggle with that for a while?
I realized, well, when I came back to normal consciousness, I realized that these thoughts, first of all, they didn't make any sense. Mm, of course, my mother loves me, and she would never hurt me. They were completely irrational, and they were, well, those entities were trying to manipulate me, and they were trying to believe me that my close family members were my greatest enemies. Mm,
Yeah, that's
so
common.
yeah, I know that's very common. Yeah.
So at some point you figured out that they weren't you, and
Yes, but
the,
that
the
awareness only came later.
and how long did it take you to figure that out?
Mm, I think I only truly believed in it after the second or third episode, because how the next episodes came on were really different. There were a different background story. I was not really in contact with myself. I started isolating myself. I stopped doing the things that were good for me, and I kind of lost contact with my soul. And then it happened again. Mm,
So the medications helped you collect yourself and calm you down long enough to realize that those thoughts that were coming into your head did not belong to you.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened from there?
Um, do you want me to talk about the content of the other episodes, or what would you like to
Yeah,
know?
go ahead.
So during the other episodes, I heard the voices of my friends. It was as if they're talking behind my back. And also I heard voices of people that I know, other people that I know, and also my spiritual mentor, uh, as if she was talking. I thought that's a kind of telepathic communication, but all the information was false, of course, because it was by the entities. So they got me to buy into that it was true.
Did you ever ask them who they were?
No, I didn't do that. No.
Okay. So they were telling you lies.
Exactly. And another time it started, I was really euphoric again, and I was not in my hometown. I was visiting a friend, and then I started buying lots of things. And after that, I was throwing away my purse and my personal items, because I thought, because, well, the entities told me to do so, and I thought I'd never need my purse again, which was really stupid and irrational. So they can get you to do things that you would never normally do.
That would get you in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you were in trouble, could you feel that your energy level was decreasing? Could you feel them taking your energy?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So that's one of the things they do. They stir up negative emotion and all kinds of trauma, and then they feed off of that negative emotional energy.
Yes, and not only that, they also keep you awake at night, which also weakens you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it weakens
And
your resistance, and they usually put nightmares. They usually stick nightmares in your head.
and the thought stream is really speedy, and it's very difficult to interrupt that thought stream which is coming from them.
Is it almost like they hypnotize you?
Not exactly. I just experienced an increased, a very fast, speedy thought stream that would come in.
That was very difficult to break.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in 2016, I've met my energy healer through my
Oh no,
professor.
you're moving way ahead. What?
Oh, okay.
How did you end up in the hospital? And what was it like when you got there? And how
It
did
was
those
terrible.
medications work when they filled you full of those medications?
They didn't work for 1 or 2 weeks. They had almost no effect, and only after some time they started working. But I actually got worse because I was locked up with all those other sick people, so to say. And
So you were afraid.
well, my mind made up when I met the other people. I only got more confused, and because with each new person that I met, a new story, a new scenario came into my mind, and that would only make me worse.
And what were the voices telling you about the others?
Oh, so many different things. I don't remember now, but with each person, there was like a different fictive story.
Was it a negative, scary story?
Not always, and not always a scary story, but always nothing to do with reality.
Okay.
For
And
example, I would think that a guy was an alien, or that a woman is acting in a way because she wants to remind me of some other person, or there was just random thoughts that I would make up in my mind.
so it was very confusing
It was very confusing, yes.
and very nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now could you feel when they got you in that kind of state, could you feel your energy decrease?
Yes, but I was also really tired and sleepy because of the medication.
Medications. And what was it like to be on those medications? What did it feel like? What did it do to your mind and your ability to function?
What it did to my mind, it blocks the ability to think. It blocks the ability for imagination. For I just had no energy and no motivation to do anything. It was not nice at all.
And you were off and on those things for, did you say 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you would stop them because they were so horrible, and then you would lapse back into this state again.
Yeah, I would stop them because I didn't feel like myself. And then after when I stopped them and a few months had gone by, I started feeling normal again.
And then how long was it before the voices started again, once you went off them?
It was about half a year.
Well, that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it range between a couple of weeks to that long, and sometimes longer, but usually it would lapse back. And what was it like dealing with the psychiatrists in that hospital where you were at?
They were doing everything according to protocols, so I would just have very short conversations with them, and that's it. There was not much involvement from their side.
So it's
And I
based.
also had to be careful about what I'd say, because I thought maybe if I say the wrong thing, or they will keep me longer there.
Yeah, and that's a concern too. So, how much? What is the average amount of time that they spent with you a day, the psychiatrist, or did
five
they see you every day?
5 minutes, really.
Yeah. So
No.
basically here they are 5 minutes, and if you say the wrong thing, they put you on more meds or they keep you there longer. So
Mhm.
what I found is patients were really afraid to talk to them because they'd afraid they'd change their meds or they'd increase their meds or they'd keep them in the hospital longer. Was that your opinion and that of the others who were in there?
Yes, and you know, you probably know about that. There's not much you can do there. There are, well, you have sports a few times in a week, then you have painting or art class, and that's it. And sometimes sometimes additionally to the psychiatrist, you'd have a meeting with a psychologist once a week, but if you were lucky.
Now, did that psychologist understand what the voices were or have any idea what was going on with you?
No, they were all going by the standard
Does,
medical and psychiatry books.
now, did that help you at all?
Not really.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't think so. And did you make friends with any of the patients there, or did you all?
Yeah, yeah, I
And
did.
what was that like, meeting the other patients and talking to them? Did they all have the same opinion of what was going on in that institution?
Hmm, some did, yes, and some also had similar hallucinations, I must say. Yeah.
So you
It,
guys would talk about the hallucinations that you
well,
had, or?
actually, yeah, talking to the other patients was more helpful than talking to the psychiatrist.
I tell you, when I was working, and I found out these things were voices, I couldn't talk to any of my colleagues. I couldn't talk to any of the psychiatrists about it. I couldn't talk to anybody about it because the only people who understood were the people who heard the voices.
Yeah, right.
I could talk to them about it, but I couldn't talk to anybody else about it. And they understood it better than the psychiatrist or anybody else also.
Mm, true.
So what did it take to get you out of there? You were there 4 times, right?
Yeah. I just had to wait until these 4 or 6 weeks were over and then I could go home. My parents would pick me up and I'd go home.
So basically, all they did there was the psychiatrist talked to you for 5 minutes. He would dish out drugs and disappear. You'd
Mhm.
be bored, pretty much bored the rest of the time, full of these drugs that were gorking you out.
Yeah,
There was Go ahead.
sometimes boredom is not that bad, actually. There were a few times when I was really fearful because I had hallucinations that, okay, I'll tell you of that happening when I had the hallucination that gas would come out from the ceiling. So I went to the nurse's room and I told the nurse, can I sit here because in the other rooms gas is coming out and I want to sit here because I thought that's the only room where no gas is coming out. So she said, yeah, you can sit here, but she didn't do anything to calm me down or to convince that what I was thinking isn't true.
So
But
it's
she let
like,
me sit
yeah,
there.
basically sit here and shut up.
Yeah. So
Uh,
sometimes it was really scary to be there.
and what did you do to convince the psychiatrist you need to get out of there, or did you just have to kind of stay there until they decided that you needed to leave?
I had to stay there until they and the legal person decided that I can go.
So they were holding you there against your will.
Yes.
Now, did you do anything dangerous to yourself or anybody else before they put you in there?
No, I didn't, but they assessed my They assessed me as that I could do something dangerous to myself or to others.
Without any evidence that you did. Did you tell them you were suicidal? Did you tell them you were thinking about hurting anybody else? Did you give them any hint that you were dangerous to yourself or anybody else?
No, no, nothing like that. But one time when my parents brought me there, I tried to run away, and police had to come and get me back into the hospital.
Okay. So I mean, nobody would want to go into that place. So here in the United States, you have to be, for them to commit you and hold you legally, you have to be an imminent threat. I mean, imminent threat to yourself or somebody else, which means you have to tell the psychiatrist that you're thinking about killing yourself, tell the psychiatrist that you're thinking about hurting somebody else, or actually attack somebody. So these guys just made this crap up and said they thought you might be dangerous and then locked you up for how long did they hold you in that place?
One time 4 weeks, one time 6 weeks.
2 months. Based on their thought that you might be dangerous without any evidence at all.
Yeah, I didn't attack anyone. I didn't tell that I had the thought of attacking anyone, nothing like that.
That is bizarre. That they wouldn't get away with that over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So they had complete control over you. They were filling you full of drugs until you were gorked out, uh, and you had to stay there for 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went through that um, 4 times over 4 years.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe for the last 2 years you realized that the voices were not you, they didn't belong to you, that they were entities and invaders.
Exactly. Especially, I realized that after working with my healer and talking about it to my spiritual mentor, who's also in the UK.
Did you ever dare try to tell a psychiatrist that these were entities and not hallucinations?
No, I wasn't that stupid.
I wasn't either. Even though I knew it cold, I didn't dare talk to them about it because I knew what they would do. Yeah. So what made you decide to go to a healer?
Mm,
And what was that like when you started? Did you feel they understood what was going on?
yes, I felt that she understood me on a different level, and I just had the feeling that she is the one who can truly help me.
Right, because she understood what you were going through, unlike the psychiatrist that would listen for 5 minutes and disappear.
Hmm. She'd spent maybe 2 hours in one session with me, and what she would do was to first get rid of check my energy field and then get rid of any entities if there were any. Then she would work on my
Well,
sub.
when she did that, did you feel any different after she got rid of these entities?
Yes, of course. The negative thoughts were less. Um,
And
also,
was it
the
pretty dramatic? Did it happen fairly suddenly?
it was pretty dramatic. Yes, for my whole family and me, we were all shocked, and also, the daunting diagnosis, paranoid schizophrenia,
Yeah,
sounds quite scary.
yeah, yeah. It does carry a stigma with it.
Yeah, and my healer told me not to listen to that diagnosis, that this isn't really true, and that there are different ways to work on it and to prevent it.
And did your first visit with the healer, did that result in substantial improvement right away?
Not right away. I had to go and see her quite frequently. Because also all the chemicals first have to leave the body, and after such an episode you're just exhausted and very slow, and recovery takes maybe half a year.
So you were feeling better all along as she worked on you.
Yeah.
And when did she first tell you that these were entities, or did you figure that ahead of time and tell her these were entities, these voices were entities? How did you guys approach that?
She told me, and she said, she explained how they work, and that also people who are not sick can also have those attachments and not even realize it.
Oh, that's true. That's so true. So you virtually what happened is those medications calmed you down enough to where you kind of got your own facilities back, but they didn't last and they didn't do you any lasting good. And you felt like a zombie while you were on them. You didn't feel like you were yourself. You couldn't think, you couldn't
Right.
function, you couldn't hold a job.
Yes, I couldn't concentrate, and yes, they calmed me down, but I didn't feel like myself at all.
Right. So weren't helping you out on any kind of permanent basis.
No,
Okay. So what was it like when you first went to the healer?
it was a relief that someone would understand and see the world differently.
See, I saw the same thing when I started working with patients. It was like, what you know what's going on, and some of them would even ask me, well, are you psychotic too? Are you crazy too? How do you know this stuff? You
Mhm.
know, and yeah, there was a big difference when they felt that you understood because they knew clearly that the psychiatrists and the medical staff did not. So it was like there was a relationship, a working relationship right away, just because you understood what they were going through.
Yes, that would lead to people opening up to you, right?
Yes, yeah. Little by little, they kind of had to test me because they didn't trust psychologists, they didn't trust psychiatrists. So it took a while. See, I was the one that had the stigma. I was the one working in there, and they had to see if they could trust me. So they would give me little bit by little bit,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of testing to see if I understood.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did, they started opening up.
And how long did it take for them to open up to you?
When I was working at the state hospital and I wasn't sure what the voices were, what I was doing was trying to get their trust to just tell me what was going on with them. Um, and that took a while. It took a while to learn how to talk to them in a way that they felt that I understood. And what I started with is the pieces that I understood. I'd talk to one patient. I'd say, okay, this is what I understand about the voices. They do this. They do this. They do this. And I don't know much else. And then that person would give me a couple other pieces. So it was like piece by piece by piece, they would give me different pieces. And the more I knew, when I met a new patient, I'd say, okay, this is what I know. What else
Mm-hmm.
can you teach me? And they're the ones that taught me,
This is how
until
you.
till I got to the point where I knew much more about them from talking to hundreds of patients than they did. So in the later years, I could sit down and go, okay, this is what you're going through. This is what the voices are telling you. This is what they're telling you about me. This is what they're telling you about the medication. Then they run patterns. They run uh, very fixed patterns. They say the same kinds of things over and over and over again. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
And my healer also told me that be careful because the voices might tell you that I'm not a good healer and I don't have the power or whatever,
Oh
and
yeah.
to not come and see her.
Well, what they would tell my patients, especially in the emergency room, when I had to get as much information across to the ones who would understand it as quickly as possible, because the administration and the psychiatrist didn't want you spending time talking to the patients. They wanted you evaluating them. They either go in the hospital, or you let them out, or you turn them back to their family, or you put them in a mental health center, or you lock them down on a psych ward. You know,
Mm.
they just wanted them out of there. And then I watched, I did work in private psych hospitals for a while. They did run some group therapy. They did have a therapist who would see them maybe once a week, but the psychiatrist only spent 5 to 10 minutes with them, checking
Mm.
their meds. I mean, how's your meds? And if they didn't like the meds, they'd change them to a different one. And if they weren't sleeping, they'd increase the meds until they turned them into zombies. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, I can't completely put down the meds, because, like with you, nobody could have reached you unless those meds calmed you down enough to where you could be reached.
At first, yes.
Yeah, they stopped the franticness of it. But yeah, they would tell the patients the same thing about me. He's stupid. He's crazy. Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when they found out I knew something about the voices, they stayed. And then the voices would say, "Get out of his office, leave, escape the emergency room, or don't go to his appointments," and da da da. They did everything they can to keep him away from me. And then if that didn't work, the voices would tell them to attack me. Now, none of them ever did, but that's what they would tell them. And it would
Mm.
run that pattern, boom, boom, boom. It was like fixed with every single one of them. So what was it like working with your healer?
It was really helpful, and she gave me also a few affirmations that I could do at home, and she helped me to get back to a balanced lifestyle, to start building healthy and loving relationships again. And
Basically telling you everything opposite of what the voices were saying.
yeah, yeah. And I think what really helps as well is doing something that is meaningful to you. So to be involved in life, I think that's really important. Even if you just do your hobbies like writing or spending time with someone that you love, or charity work or painting or whatever.
You found them breaking you off from all that stuff. They broke you off from your family, telling you that your family was talking behind your back. They broke you off from all your friends, until they
Yeah.
had you so scared that it was just you and them.
Yes, exactly. And I had to learn to trust myself again, to trust my family and friends again, and to build a positive self-image, because that also took a long time to get back to where I was before all of this started.
Because they were running you down all the time, right? Telling you stuff like you're stupid, you're crazy,
Yeah,
nobody
your
likes you.
friends. Yeah,
People are just faking like they like you. Your family doesn't care about you. All that kind of stuff, right?
all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing ever good.
Hmm. And I
Uh,
also have to say that these entities know you so well, like they know the order of events of things that you do. For example, if you get into a conflict, then you get upset, then you isolate yourself, then you smoke a cigarette or whatever. So they know the order of events of how things happen, and then they know when to get in and to disturb you and get hold of you. So you have to really know yourself well. You really have to get to know yourself, though, so that you know yourself better than the entities do.
so they were like a bunch of vultures sitting around waiting for something to go wrong, and then they'd throw gas on the fire.
Hmm. If there
And
was something emotionally upsetting, yeah.
Now, what I found is they had complete access to the memory of the patients I worked with. They could go into their memories and they could pull up the most everything bad that they've ever done and rub it in their face over and over again until they became upset. Did you experience that same thing or something similar where they would go in and pull something up that you did and then keep throwing it at you?
Yes, I experienced something similar too. They would come up, they would remind me of something shameful, or they would remind me of something I didn't do. So they would tell me, "Oh, you're so lazy, you didn't do that and that and that," and then the list would go bigger.
Yeah, I've had some to they would pulled up stuff that the guy did like 20 years ago, and they threw that in his face, something that he'd forgotten long ago, and they pulled it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, things like that, or also what they tell me, you missed so many opportunities in your life, da 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 da.
Yeah, trying to make you feel guilty or shameful.
Yeah, yeah.
And what did it feel like when they were draining you of your energy?
I had no energy left basically, and no motivation to do anything good for myself.
So you were low energy the entire time.
Yes, low energy. All I could do is just watch films and eat and just go for a walk with my dog, maybe. That's all.
Now, did they try to get you to watch negative stuff on television or read negative books or focus you on negative things all the time?
Well, no, with me that didn't happen. No.
Okay, that's good. So what did they tell you about your healer?
They couldn't do much because she warned me that they tried to convince me not to go see her.
And did they do
So
that?
I was mm, from times to times they tried, but she warned me beforehand, so I knew about that, and so that didn't happen.
Yeah, I ran into that all the time. They would tell the patient, don't go there, break the appointment, don't show up, tell them you're sick. They did everything, and they did the same thing with patients trying to go to church. Did you ever try to go to church while you were hearing these voices or talk to a preacher?
Yes, I think after the episode, my parents and I we went to a church. That
And
was fine. I
what
mean,
did the voices do when you went there?
nothing much because that was already after the episode was over and I was
Oh,
lots calmer.
oh, so it wasn't while you were hearing the voices.
No.
Okay. So you never did try to go to a church or talk to a preacher while the voices were going on.
Oh, that would be impossible, probably.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much true. They go nuts around preacher when you try to go to church. They don't like that at all. Um, do they still visit you from time to time, or do you sense they're around checking the waters from time to time?
Mm, Sometimes at nighttime before sleep, but not often. That doesn't happen often.
Mm. And and what do you do normally when they come at night like that and try to keep you from sleeping?
I memorized a word, 24 words that I have to imagine in shape, color, and movement. So then it goes like rabbit, man, tree, and so on. And that actually stops it.
So you repeat a list of words?
Yes, exactly. I memorized these 24 words and I have to imagine, for example, if I say rabbit, I imagine the rabbit moving to the man, then I imagine the man walking, and then I imagine the tree, and that interrupts.
That interrupts it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And how did they react to you doing that? How
Hmm.
did the voices react to you when you tried to break them up that way?
Well, I don't feel much of a reaction. I just do it for myself so that I can fall asleep.
Okay. And does that shut them up?
Usually it helps, yeah.
Wow. So that's interesting that they do that. Well, what about prayers? Did you ever try to use prayers against them?
Yes, I find prayers and affirmations really helpful, especially when you say the prayer or read the prayer for 3 times.
Okay. And what advice would you give other people who are hearing voices like you did after all you've been through? What would you want to tell them?
I would tell them to find somebody who truly understand what causes it and to work with some alternative practitioner like a shaman, a healer, or maybe even a psychiatrist who would be awake enough to understand what it is. And I think it's also important to really know yourself and to stay connected to yourself and your true wishes, and to stay connected with
So
your
to
soul.
so to kind of be able to identify which thoughts are yours and which thoughts are theirs, and
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, to I think it's something that has to be trained. The discernment to be able to discern between your own thoughts and outside thoughts coming in from the entities. I think it takes some training to do that.
yeah, then the first thing you got to do is realize that these things are entities and they're not your thoughts. Because I've had a number of patients that would ask the voices, who are you? What are you? And they would say, we are you. So
Exactly.
did they try to convince you that they were you?
I don't think so, no.
They just kind of took over your mind and you just assumed they were?
They kind of got into my normal thought stream when I was not hearing them as coming from outside. So they work like, um,
Did they sound like your own thoughts, only they were messed up?
yes, yes.
And that's what's so tricky about them because we're all taught that any thought that goes into your head is yours. It belongs to you. And that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as long as you're functioning with that in mind, then you really can't address this. Because if you think all your thoughts are yours, then these things are filling your head with these negative thoughts that are getting you in a lot of trouble, and they got control.
Mm-hmm. And you'll feel really guilty for if you think these are your thoughts.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do is to make you feel guilty and shameful and fearful. Um, So if you had to say something to the psychiatric mafia, and what would you have to say to them?
I'd say that they have to wake up.
Yeah, I would too. And I think Sherry would agree. Um, so what Sherry said is that every negative thought about yourself or anybody else comes from them. What do you think about that statement?
I think that's true, but I'm also thinking that our subconscious also has sometimes repeats negative thoughts. And um, how do you know if it's coming from the subconscious or from the entities?
Well, it doesn't really matter because it has the same effect. So thoughts Swedenborg says all our thoughts. This was a Christian mystic who lived 700 years ago. He says all thoughts come from somewhere else. They don't originate within you, but you're the chooser. You choose which ones you want to pay attention to. You choose which ones you want to act on. And whichever way you act, either negative or positive, you start getting pulled in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is the intention of that thought. So you have a bad thought and it tells you to do something that's going to get you in trouble, and you stop and ask yourself, well, is that your intention to do that thing and get into trouble and to think that way?
Yeah,
And
then you'd really realize it's not your
then
intention.
you
And
realize that.
I'd also have to say that if you get don't get involved into going that downward spiral of negative thinking, because it only gets you more miserable.
Yeah, it gets you deeper and deeper, and it's harder to escape from.
Yeah.
Okay, we're closing on an hour here. Yeah, what else would you want people to know based on your experience? Because your experience matches the experience of hundreds of patients that I've talked to, except for the system there, which is, where they can lock you up on the suspicion that you might do something, even though you didn't say anything that you were going to harm anybody else. You didn't say you were going to harm yourself or others. Uh, they just they just come out of nowhere and say, oh, well, potentially she might hurt somebody. Did you ever do anything to hurt yourself or to hurt anybody else? Did you ever do anything that would make them think you were dangerous? Or did they just fabricate this out of thin air?
Never. I never did anything to myself or to others.
So the first time you talked to a psychiatrist, how long did he spend with you?
The first time, you mean when I just got into the hospital?
Yeah, the first time you went into the hospital.
The first time they'd spend more time than all the other regular times, because they had to assess my situation and how I was feeling. So the first time was actually longer than the other times.
And what would you guess that amount of time was?
I'd guess 10 or 15 minutes, maybe.
The first time?
Yes.
So here's a psychiatrist sitting there assessing your entire life, your diagnosis, how dangerous you were, what kind of state you were in based on 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous. I spent much more time than
It
that.
is. Yeah.
That's totally ridiculous. And then they prescribed you drugs and they said, okay, we're keeping you here.
It's ridiculous, I know.
It reminds me of Nazi Germany. That's disgusting. From my point of view, being in the field for 35, 40 years, what they're doing is disgusting. They only spend 15 minutes with you. They fill you full of drugs, turn you loose on the ward with a bunch of other patients that are unstable, and they hold you there based on a suspicion and no actual proof at all that you've done anything, that you're potentially dangerous. You never said you were dangerous. You never told them you were going to hurt yourself or anybody else. So in 15 minutes, they decide to take away a month of your life and keep you on a psych ward.
Yeah, it's very ridiculous. And do you think that health system is going to change in the next few years or in the next decade?
It's going to change because of people like you and what you're doing right now. There's not a lot of patients who have the courage. Now, I've found a handful. Sherry's one of them. There's maybe 5 or 10 people that are now saying what they're doing is bullcrap. It doesn't work. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what causes schizophrenia. They don't know how to treat it. All they're doing is giving you basically a chemical lobotomy. Now, that's not to say that the drugs aren't useful. They're very useful, because if they didn't give you those drugs, you couldn't have calmed down enough for anybody to reach you, because your mind was spinning so fast, and they had a hold of you, and they were controlling your mind and your reality. So it took those drugs to slow you down in order for you know somebody to reach you.
Yeah, exactly. Because with those entities influencing you, you are in a completely different reality. And yeah, you'd have to
Right.
have something to calm you down.
Yeah, so that's the main purpose. That's why they work, because they calm you down. But the thing is, once they calm you down, they're telling you got to take these drugs for the rest of your life. And what they're doing is they're destroying your brain. They're shrinking your brain and destroying your peripheral nervous system. And they know this. With long-term use, I've seen patients at the state hospital that they were just shuffling around. They were like permanent zombies, and the damage that these drugs did is permanent. It doesn't reverse itself. And after 6 months, there is, in 60% of the patients that they're given these things, there is damage. And these patients report that it feels like a hollow part of their mind that they just can't get back. Um,
Yes, and it's like a closed circle. It seems like there is no way out, and I feel really sorry for all the neurological damage being done to people, and it's horrible.
Now, do you feel any different now than before they put you on those drugs? I mean, can you sense that your mental functions are different in some way, or did you
They
escape that damage?
they were, but I think I'm lucky not to have any damage.
And how long do you think that the effects of those drugs lasted after you quit taking them? I mean, how long did you feel gorked up?
After I quit, I think they still lasted for a month or so.
So you still felt groggy and kind of like a zombie for a month.
Yes, I did, yeah.
Uh, and could you hold down a job or function while you were on those drugs?
No, but after that, I did a course in psychology, and that was good for me.
Oh, good. So what should be happening is they should be using those drugs to calm the person down where they could reach him, and then have something else to put them into, like your healer that knows what's going on, who can reach the person and then get rid of these entities, because psychiatry does not even believe in them. Matter of fact, you can't tell them anything. They're taught in medical school that these voices are hallucinations. The problem is they run very specific fixed patterns, and they're negative. I mean, one of the biggest patterns is that they're negative. What holds them on that negative track? What keeps them negative instead of being random like real hallucinations? That's the first question. And then there's like 23 more after that. These are fixed set patterns that these voices run, and they all run them the same way. So 2,000 miles away, when I worked at the psychiatric hospital there, the voices were telling those patients the same exact kinds of things that they're telling them here in Arizona, 2,000 miles away. And all these different institutions, all the voices, it's like they're all made from the same cookie cutter. They're all telling people that they infest the same kind of crap. It's like they're all programmed to do the same thing.
Hmm.
It's really strange that way. So, what would you have to say to the families of people who have sons or daughters who are suffering from the voices?
I'd say be patient and don't give up, because there are alternative methods and there is hope, definitely. It's not like the psychiatrists tell that would last for the whole life of the patient. That's not true.
Mm. So, they were doing everything they could, the voices were, to try to break you off from your family. And, family support is really critical at this time, even though the voices are making you do all kinds of weird stuff to drive your family away. So What was that like for you when they started telling you that your family is plotting against you and they really don't like you, and your family showing that they're concerned? I mean, that must have been a battle in and of itself. What was that like for you?
It was like an inner conflict, and it was really confusing because the voices were trying to tell me that everything that I believed about myself or my family was not true, and that now they are telling me the truth. So it was really confusing, but I remember my family, when I was in that psych ward, my family visited me every day, and they didn't give up. And even if I pushed them away, they'd still come the next day and visit me.
And can you tell the listeners how important that was to you that they did that?
That was really, really important.
Yeah, and that's one thing we found too, that the support of the family is absolutely critical, no matter how bad the person is.
True.
Okay, well, Sherry's telling us that we're about out of time here. Is there anything else that you want people to know? Because your message is going to go out to a lot of people.
I think I already mentioned that, but I'd like people to know that it's really beneficial if you know yourself well, because these entities know your behavioral patterns. So it's really important that you know yourself better than those entities do.
Yes, so be able to tell the difference between the negative thoughts that they're sticking in your head and what you truly believe and who you really are.
Yes, be aware. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think we got our message across here, especially to closed-minded psychiatry that are stuck in their brainwashed medical programs and big pharma that are trying to convince people that the only solution is to drug them senseless. Um, so I want to thank you very much for speaking with us and having the courage to come out and tell the truth of what you've been through, because it's people like you that are going to wake up the system, because
Thank you.
they're asleep.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Okay, Cher, I guess we're done.